believe this light's doing very much. Is it?
It is a bit far away.
You know what? When the batteries are fresh, it's like, bam! I need to get it better. This is like a little, I don't know. I feel like I paid not a lot of dollars for this.
Where's my light, speaking of? I haven't used it in a while.
A little self-conscious when I look at the video footage because they're all bright colored. And,
me? Oh my goodness.
And I'm all dark.
No. Olive, get down. Off the ground.
Oh no! The whole thing literally just fell apart. Ah! Oh no!
What can I set you on?
This is becoming a disaster. Oh, well. Oh, chutes and ladders. Okay. This is. Oh! Oh, I don't even know how to tell it doesn't make a difference because the entire fixture just completely fell apart.
Oops.
That is bright. But
it's
hey,
funny
it
that
really
it doesn't
lightens up the whole.
Oh. Yeah, you're gonna get all fancy with your lights. So am I.
No, I'm literally destroying my light. This is quality podcasting right here.
Yep. Welcome to our podcast. We still don't know what we're doing.
I need tape. Why don't I have tape in my office? I'm not
Jeez.
tape.
Do not stare at the light.
I'm just gonna wedge this deck of yoga. Ah, shit. That's not them. I just want people to be able to see me. Look at the difference this makes.
Yeah, that is.
That's right. That makes a huge difference.
It does.
Now I just need to figure out how to make this stay. Ah! This is not gonna work. That's what she said. Okay. Oh! Nope, not those. I'm gonna try to use magnet. See, this is what happens when I wear white. Okay, try this one more time. If it doesn't work, I'm just gonna quit. I'm just not gonna be illuminated. Oh, I have an idea. Here we go. Ah! Okay. Hang on. I'll take this, plug it in right there, turn it on. Let's see here. Like that. Bounce it off the wall. Play the piano a little bit.
Okay.
How do I look? Bright? Do I look bright?
You do. You look really bright, especially with your white on.
Look, it's like a shadow where the mic is.
I know.
Whoa. Okay, you ready to do this finally? I'm just
yeah, 4 minutes in.
I can't even see the clock. Okay. I can see nothing. I cannot see you. This is
So
blinding. It is. Here, let's just do that. I used to think those lyrics that followed that were different. I used to think it was wrapped up like a douchebag in the middle of the night. Wrapped up like a douchebag in the middle of the night. It makes sense when you're a kid. And then I would sing that and people would be like, what is wrong with you?
What does wrapped up like a douchebag
in the middle of the night? I don't even know, but next time you hear that song, you're going to think of those lyrics.
Oh
I
my
actually
gosh.
don't know what the right
Wow.
lyrics are. I just know that those are not them.
Those are not it. Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the True North Podcast, where two practicing light workers get together every single fucking week to continue an ongoing conversation about wholeness and healing for body and mind so that you can live as your true self and follow your true north. I'm Ryan.
Hey, friends. I'm Abby.
Hey, friends.
Hey, friends.
That was lovely.
I'm going to experiment with how I say my name. I'm going to use different frequencies.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't like how I say my name when I go back and listen to the podcast.
I'm Abby. You don't like that?
I'm Abby. It's like,
That's
hello,
perfect.
I'm here. No.
I don't see anything wrong with that at all.
All right. So,
what are we
for
going to talk about?
listeners listening and not watching, I must tell them you are wearing white.
I am wearing white. And you
it's
also can't see because of the mic, but it also has a little bit of a plunging neckline.
my goodness.
I know. I don't like it. I mean, I do like this is the softest shirt I own.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but to like feel myself up when I wear it because it's just amazing feeling. But I don't like V-necks.
Okay.
And this is also the only V-neck I own. So it's like my both most and least favorite shirt at the same time. But it is white.
What's your problem with the V-neck?
I just don't like them, Abby.
Okay.
There's not a thing there.
Okay. There's not a thing there. But it's like the only time I've ever seen you in recent memory wearing white.
Yes, I did a healing today virtually. By virtually, I just mean it was over Zoom. It was a very real healing. It was just not in person.
Yeah.
And holy shit, I was blown away.
Were you originally planning to wear white based on the conversation we had last episode?
Planning on wearing green based on the conversation that we had last episode.
Because that's neutral.
Because it's the healing color.
Or is that also the okay?
It's the heart chakra and it's the color of healing. And I was like, I'm a hailer, so I'm gonna wear the healing color.
I'm a hailer.
I'm a hailer from Texas.
But green, when you do wear green, it is the neutral color that sort of balances out the energies. So green is also a fantastic color. Like that makes sense. It's the healing color.
Well, because a lot neutral. Of the things we talked about in that healing was about balancing. Mm-hmm. But then I switched to white because you were like, wear white.
Because I wanted to see what would happen. And something happened.
Oh, okay. So I didn't do the thing that I normally see. This light being here is casting really stark shadows, and now I see a lot of fuzz, and I didn't take my ADHD medicine, so I'm really distracted. Okay, so I didn't do the normal energy healing that I normally do. It's normally very much my hands emit this tingly sensation that people feel in their body, and then it's like kind of very Reiki-ish.
Mm-hmm. Did you not do that because you're live, or you were not live? I mean,
well, I was trying to follow the lead of my guide the whole time, and that never presented itself as the thing that I should do. I'm at a point in my life where I'm beginning to ask, is this the thing that I should do, instead of just like charging in to do it? So I didn't go in assuming that I'm just going to turn on my hand. I know I have some very good influences in my life who are helping me to become that person. But I was just following guidance, and I was like, okay, what's the thing to do here? And I've got this healing modality that I'm calling ARC. I don't know that I've actually named it on the podcast, but it's ARC. It's active reconnective centering, because it's active. You're actually doing stuff. It's reconnective because you're connecting back to the parts of you that you've lost that have caused the problem. And then it's centering on you and your body and kind of like bring everything that you are into one fixed point that you can focus on holistically. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just going to spill the beans. I have this deck of yoga poses. Whoa. I'll put a link. I got them on Amazon, so I'll put a link to the thing in the show notes. But it's funny because they're about the size of tarot cards. And so when I went to go see Kathleen, I was talking about my own yoga practice on myself, where like in the morning I have a yoga practice that's more like the normal thing that people go to yoga for, but that in the PM I have a different yoga practice where I just kind of like draw certain poses like tarot and take that as the flow that I'm supposed to go through that night to gain information about myself and my life story through what my body tells me as I go through that flow. And she was like, no one else is doing this. You have to do this. You have to teach this. This is cool. This is amazing. And so I was like, okay, sure, I'll do it. And so that's kind of what I did. We talked about what was going on with his body. And I was like, what do you know about how what do you know about the energy meridians and the chakras and all that stuff? He didn't know a lot. So I kind of told him the energetic representations of the things that are going on in his body and what that could mean. I was like, this is happening anywhere else in your life? He was like, oh yeah, this is like my whole life. And that made a lot of sense to me. And normally you, as the patient or the client, will draw the cards that make the flow. And then we go through it together. And I kind of cue you up on like, here's how to listen and what to listen for and take note of the things that your body's telling you or epiphanies or whatever. And then we debrief after. It's like, it's informational. You go through the yoga flow. I go through it with you. And then sometimes I'll do like the actual energy work while a person's doing yoga, or I'll do it with them or whatever. But we didn't really have the ability to do that this time. And especially he just recovered from a surgery where he wasn't really able to do a lot of things. But it turned out that he was, instead of being led to a whole bunch of cards to create a yoga flow, he was led to one card. I was like, oh, this never happens. This must have been wrong. But I was like, no, it's not wrong. And so I kind of trusted the guidance and went back and forth and picked the card myself. And so we talked a little bit about the pose, what happens physically when you're doing it, what happens energetically when you're doing it, what happens spiritually. And it was all kind of all the things that he needs to do in his own life to really shore up the things that are expressing themselves as pain and dysfunction in the body are all rooted in this one pose.
May I ask what the pose is?
Boat.
Oh, that's a powerful pose.
Yeah. And
oh, wow.
Before we even drew that card, I was talking about how he needed to be grounded and he needed to do a lot of rooting, and how all the things that are happening in the chakras elsewhere in his body are coming from a place of him just not having that stability of having anything going on in his root chakra. And then if you look at how, it's really easy to say that your body is an echo of your energy body. So like whatever is happening in your energy is going to be reflected in your body. But then I also think that whatever happens in your life story is reflected in your energy. And so if you look at what the root represents, it's like everything on the bottom layer of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all your most carnal, primal needs, sleep, food, sex, just your basic body things. And all of those parts of his life are places that are just wildly out of whack right now. And so it all kind of put together this holistic picture of energetically what's going on in his body that's both a reflection of his life circumstance and also informing his bodily circumstance. And so he just had a surgery to address the bodily response. But I was like, if you don't fix this energetically, your body's going to find another way to express this problem. And the way that you fix it energetically is going to start with this yoga pose. And usually that's the thing. What really blew my mind was that normally the yoga is informational, like we go through it together, but the yoga itself isn't supposed to solve anything. It's just supposed to give you information. It's a way of listening to your body and opening up a space for your body to communicate with you in a way that we can use to actually come up with a real healing regimen for you. But in this case, I felt my master guide talking through me, being like, you need to do this pose every day, and this is your meditation practice. Like it's a one pose flow. It is your whole flow. Treat it like a whole flow, not a pose. And every single day you need to be doing this. Not that doing this is going to all of a sudden fix all of your problems, but what it is it's going to direct energy to the place in your bodily carriage that energy needs to be for your body to express itself in a way that is in your highest good. And then all of a sudden, all these little things that are out of place will start to snap into place. Not magically, but because you're rewiring yourself and becoming a different self. And that different self is a person who's going to operate more wholly. WHOLLY. And that was nothing I'd ever said to anyone before. I've never said to anyone, do this thing, and that's going to be the thing you need to do when it comes to yoga. But I was even telling him, I was like, these words are coming through me. They're not coming from me. So listen up, because I really feel like this is exactly what you need in this moment. And that was really cool. And while I was saying that, my energy was kicked in. The energy that I used from my hands to like interact with somebody, it was on. Like it was all turned on, but it wasn't just my hands. It was all at my torso, all across my shoulders, all down my arms. I had goosebumps on my forearms. Like it was coursing. But it wasn't coming out in the form of me pushing energy into another human body. It was just coming out through words.
Okay.
And it was words that I felt the thing that signals to me that it might be my master guide talking through me is that it's words that I wasn't ready to say, that I'm not coming up with. I don't, we kind of know what it feels like to have an idea and have that idea processed into words. And this wasn't that. Like, it didn't feel like anything that I even would have come up with, because it wasn't part of what I thought my modality was. It wasn't part of the recipe. But as I'm saying things, I'm listening to myself say these. I'm like, oh, that's better than what I was going to bring to this.
So do you feel that you invited spirit in simply by wearing white?
Well,
it allowed it to penetrate your aura?
I invited spirit in intentionally, being like, hey, spirit, lead me here. But I think this is tricky, because I would love to go back into an alternate reality where I do the same thing wearing black.
Right. Yeah.
I can't.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Right? But I do feel like I was more charged, more lit up, more buzzy than I normally am. Even when I'm turning on the energy and I'm interacting with another person, and there's like a very tangible energy exchange that I can feel. What I was feeling this time in my own body was magnified. It was more intense than that, than how it feels when I'm actually doing in-person energy work.
That's interesting. This is really interesting. I would love to be around a group of people wearing white. This is my next goal.
I am a little bit sold on the idea that when I'm doing spirit-led, spirit-driven things, that maybe I should be wearing, or at least be more mindful of what I'm wearing, and definitely not be wearing black and dark gray.
Right, because I don't want to put up a wall to receive that energy, or make it more difficult to get into my aura, into my energetic field, just because I'm wearing a color that doesn't permit that energy to come through. This is fascinating.
It was a very exciting experience.
Yeah.
I was getting more excited than he was. Like, at one point I was like bouncing up and down, and I was like, here's what you're gonna do, here's how it all works. And he kind of like, it was a lot. I could tell it was a lot for him. Yeah. Because I also asked, like, what's your favorite color? What's your least favorite color? And all and he's like, what does that have to do with anything? Oh, and get this. Okay. Remember how I said that I see sounds as color? But it doesn't map onto, it's not linear. It's not chromatic, where like every single higher pitch is the corresponding higher color. Like, it kind of jumps around. I asked him, just hum a note. Any note. Just hum a note. And he did. And I saw what I saw, and it resonated as a certain color in my own experience. But I also had this idea that it was off. I was like, okay, well, I'd never done that before either. I'd never ever thought about doing that until I was sitting right there, and I got a little tap on the shoulder. It was like, hey, get a note out of this person. Because then you can use that information to figure out what color corresponds to it and then what's going on. But the note that he gave me was orange, and there was nothing orange about anything else that he was talking about. Nothing about sacral chakra, nothing, not at all.
But boat is a very grounding
red. But
not always. It's a lot of core work. That's like your entire core, not just grounding.
You're right. I mean, the specific problem areas that we were talking about that are like medical problem areas for him right now are all here to here. It's all heart to head. It was the heart, throat, and third eye chakra that were in question if you were to talk about his immediate experience of what his body was telling him. And so as I was kind of gathering this information and listening to him talk and listening to him, tell his story, I realized, I didn't even need him to hum a note. Because you know how sometimes people will talk and they always just kind of come back to the same note, like this note right here that I'm saying is my note is whatever note that is. Like if you were to muffle my words and just hear the tones, I kind of hang out at that one note. Well, I did that. I kind of like tuned into that and heard, like, when he's not directly affecting his words with a specific tonality, like what's his home base note, and that note was blue. And his main problem that he came to me with was his thyroid. I was like, okay, that makes more sense.
Well, it makes a lot of sense that orange and boat and all the grounding came up, because that's how you balance those upper chakras.
Yes.
Is when you are so
Right.
disconnected from spirit, then you need to start actually, because it's the partner to spirit.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was very easy to put together a picture of how his third eye, throat, and heart chakras were all interacting and affecting each other in different ways that were then reflected directly in his thyroid and his brain and in his lungs.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. I just got this crazy visual.
Of what?
Oh my gosh, I'm really starting to see things. This is so weird.
Say it, say it, say it, say it.
When he's in boat pose, he needs to produce a sound. Because the sound, so he's holding boat, but then he produces like just the whatever, hum a sound, or go ah or om or whatever. But then what that's going to do is it's pulling the energy from the grounding, and this is what I saw, energy moving up from grounding, and it's going to actually push the crap, the stagnant energy in the throat out of the way.
So that makes sense, because last time I did a spirit-led yoga flow of my own, I was like, I was told, hey, make a noise. This whole time I was just and that makes sense. That because I was being shown that was a component. Almost inverted boat. I was doing yes,
you were in downward dog, yeah.
But I was doing it through every pose that I was doing. There were some warriors in there. There was some mountain. There was like a bunch of things, and they all had their own sound. That makes sense. Yes. So there is an idea of, and this is one thing that kind of like clicked into place for me, was I was asking, like, why is my color spectrum so wacky? Because if I were to if I were to play the notes that correspond to the colors of the rainbow in the order of the rainbow, it would be, can you hear that?
Yes.
It would be, nope.
That's your
This is red,
interpretation?
orange, yellow, green, violet. No, blue, violet.
Interesting.
And then this one you would think would be indigo, but I see it as brown.
Brown.
Which is just like dark orange.
Yeah.
So that has a relationship there. But normally when you hear people talk about chakras and colors and how each one has its own tone, it goes like, it's like,
it just has up.
Yeah, but that's not mine. Mine is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet.
Oh, that almost sounded like a melody.
This sounds like a sour note. Like it should be.
That one does. That one throws me off.
Right? But then if you go up an octave, then you have, which then puts you back on that original chord, which is a minor chord. It's a minor chord and then a diminished chord.
Oh.
It's very sad sounding.
It is very sad sounding.
And one goes up, and one goes down. And so my question was like, why the fuck is that what I see? But then the answer that came to me, it came to me today when the guy was speaking in this. Every single thing, every time he came back to anything, it was right here. And that note is blue to me.
Okay.
With his voice, he was actually telling me the chakra that was the problem that we needed to focus on.
In his sound.
According to what I see.
Right.
Not according to what anyone else says corresponds color to sound wise. It's almost like I was programmed to see certain notes as certain colors because those are going to correlate in the experiences that I have with my clients and their voices.
Right. Yeah, so that's, I would no longer clarify that as wrong.
No, it's just different. And the other thing that sucks is I'm trying to make ARC something that is teachable. And that is not a component that I can teach.
Because it's
I know there are other synesthetes out there, but no two synesthetes see the same thing. You can have two different people who see sound, and you're going to play the same sound, and they're all going to see something different. So that's fun.
Interesting. Are you going to see him again? I think you should wear black.
I told him I'm going to I'm going to follow up. Well, here's the funny thing is that when we met, we've only ever seen each other in person one time, like 5 years ago.
Okay.
We became Facebook friends, and our entire relationship has been on Facebook.
Wow.
We were in a Barnes & Noble, and he was wearing a brown trench coat, a brown bowler hat, and it had goggles on it, like a steampunk cosplay. But it was just like on a random Tuesday. Like there was no reason. It wasn't like an event that necessitated being costumed. He was just, that's just how and he had like a brown, like a vest with like a pocket watch. Like it was the whole thing.
Wow. And
I deviated and I just was like, oh, I had to tell this guy, I love your style. And then we stood there talking for a while, and then we started talking about Taoism and the Tao, and kind of had like a really meaningful connection. Swapped Facebook information, and we've had a online friendship ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And so I heard that he had a surgery, and I was like, hey, I want to try my ARC healing method on you. He's like, okay. And so we did it, and that's where this came from. But that was it. He was wearing brown. He was wearing this color.
Huh.
Yeah.
All right. Good stuff.
Wacky stuff. Well, that's our time.
No.
I made that joke last time.
We are just getting started. Please don't shut us off. Not yet.
No. This was all the intro. Welcome to the True North podcast.
We already said that.
Okay, so goodness. Yeah, this is so I'm gonna have to tell him. I'm gonna follow up. I told him I'd follow up in a couple weeks, just to be like, how is your rooting using boat pose practice going? But I'll have to tell him also that I need you to, which is also funny because it was a thyroid surgery that he had. So his doctor's like, you can't sing for several months. And then I was like, well, can you just sing a note for me right now?
Yeah.
But like he can have a conversation with me. So I just need to be like, hey, in a way that doesn't exert your throat any more than just having conversation. Hum a note. Make a sound.
Yeah, it's almost like just pushing out the air when you exhale through the chords.
Yeah.
In your voice box, but not not really exerting any effort. Interesting.
Yeah. So it was fun stuff. I'm to a point where I'm starting to go back to every single person. Remember a few episodes ago, or maybe a lot more of it than that now, but like where I was talking about how my healing was stagnant and people would contact me for healing, and I'd be like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. And then it would just never, it would fall through the cracks. Well, I've gone through and picked up every single one of those fucking cases.
Good.
And been like, hey, sorry, I, let this slide, but if you're still open to some healing, then let's figure out a time. So I'm starting to get
pick that back up.
And I've got another one next week.
Did you do an abundance ritual on this?
Not on the healing. Well, I don't know. I mean, I do charge for this.
Yeah.
And so the abundance ritual was, there was a certain number in mind that I would like to see coming my way. I mean, it would take a lot of bookings. But maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, right. Is you put a number of bookings that you would want to make that certain amount in your head.
No, the only two abundance rituals I've done have been for the podcast or for the True North. I don't even want to call it the podcast anymore because there's more True North stuff than just the podcast. But,
right.
Maybe I should go find some bark.
So let's clarify. Does it have to be bark or just a fallen twig?
That would be a question for Kathleen Tucci.
I'm going to have to reach out to her.
Because I remember her saying bark.
And I did not.
You just did a stick.
But it had bark on it. Because it was difficult to write on.
I want to know where she got this from. Like we go to a retreat and I'm just like, yes, everything you say, I'm going to believe 100% and take notes on.
Yeah.
And then she was like, oh, just do this little thing with like some vines and bark. And I was like, this is insane. And I've done it twice.
So okay, let's clarify what we're talking about because we have not yet talked about this.
The prosperity ritual.
It's the prosperity ritual. I call it an abundance ritual. It's something that I was aware of before Kathleen Tucci.
Such a hippie.
But I'll own that. Flower child, tree hugger, whatever you want to call me. I'll take it. But this, like, her method for doing it is different than what I knew to do, how to do it.
What did you know to do?
Mine was simply, you just sort of make it more of a meditation experience where you write down, like if you're talking about in terms of money, because that's where people want to do an abundance ritual the most. Although, okay, so what it is basically it's this ritual that you're doing, and you're setting an intention, typically around how much money you need for a certain item that you want to purchase that you don't have the money for now, or a dollar amount that you want to make in your job, or the amount of money you need to buy a certain house that you want. And you set the intention to the exact dollar that you need. And like, I think you should share the one about the car insurance thing in just a minute, so people understand what we're really talking about.
The car insurance.
Where you spent so much money to join the tribe of the Zen team tribe. And you wanted that money. Gap insurance, something like that.
Oh, yes. Okay, so, and she just said this in passing at the retreat. Like, there wasn't even a section on it. She was like, oh, by the way, you can do this thing. And then she told us what it was, and I took notes and I did it. But it's like the thing that Kathleen said is you find bark and you write your name on it, and you find a flowering vine and you wrap it in a little loop, and you use some type of a natural twine or something to bind the looping flowering vine to the bark. And then you find a body of water, like a natural one, and you just say your request and you send it off like a little sailboat. So that's how you do the prosperity
ritual. Yeah.
And so I did one.
Kathleen's version. Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like it's like a birthday wish. Like if I say it out loud, it won't come true. But I had a thing in mind, and let me make sure I got the details right before I just blab about it. Okay, so then, completely unrelated, I joined a different tribe, very similar to our tribe, but for a different podcast, a different group of people. And I paid for like a whole year up front, which was like $250 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the two people who co-host the podcast reached out. We ended up having a conversation and kind of like forming a little bit of a friendship, and that was really cool. And he promoted our podcast on his podcast, which has significantly more listeners. I already plugged him. I don't know why I'm making this a secret. It's Zen Parenting Radio. I guess it's like, I don't want people to like, I don't know. I don't know what I want people to do. I'm in a weird spot. But okay, so it was Zen Parenting Radio, and they have a group called Team Zen. And so I joined Team Zen. And so we talked on the phone, and he was like, I think you're really interesting, and I think your podcast is great. So then he plugged us on there, and we've gotten a lot more listeners, a lot more views. Like my healing page is just a Facebook page that doesn't even have a cover photo, and it's getting like 35 hits a day as opposed to the 0 hits it was getting before. So I have to build a website around it. But got a lot of exposure, gotten a lot of attention, and I had the thought, like, what if that little thing was the thing that this prosperity ritual brought? Like, it helped the podcast prosper in this way. And I was curious about that, like if that little connection point was the answer to that specific ritual. And then I kind of, like I do, I asked for a little confirmation. So then I almost said fast forward. Rewind to this summer, we had gotten to a place where we only owed a few thousand left on our car, so I just paid it off. And when you pay it off, the bank figures out if you had any gap insurance, that like, because you pay up the whole year. So we maybe owed some of that. And so I just did it and forgot about it, because that's what you do when you pay off a car. You just forget about the fact that you ever had car payments and move on with your life. But then we get a check in the mail the day I asked that question. The day I'm like, okay, so was this one connection the answer to that prosperity ritual? And then I go check the mail, and in one of the things that we got was the refund check from that gap insurance. It was $250. And I was like, huh.
Huh.
What a fascinating little coincidence.
Yes.
And again, one of my things is faith is treating coincidences like they aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I went and joined Team Zen because I saw that they're doing what we're trying to do, and I wanted to see what it was like from the back end. I wanted to see what it was like from the customer standpoint, and so I was like, kind of just doing research for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, I mean, it's also a good group to join. I think if you're not listening to Zen Parenting Radio, you should be listening to Zen Parenting Radio, and if you want more, Team Zen has been great. It's been a great experience so far. So there was also that, and I thought it was time, but there were a lot of reasons I went to it that predated my doing this prosperity ritual. And we paid off the car before I even knew that the prosperity ritual was a thing. So you could make an argument that even if I hadn't sent out that prosperity ritual, then I would have paid $250 to become a member of TZen, and I would have gotten $250 in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have happened with or without the ritual. You could make that argument. But again, kind of like not being able to go back in time and do that healing with that guy wearing black instead of white this morning, all we have is the experience that we have. All we have is that things happened in the order that they happened in. And if you are communing with soul, if you're communing with spirit, sorry, not soul. I know it's a trigger word for some of the people on this podcast. If you're communing with spirit really? And you're trusting that connection and that guidance, you also kind of, I operate from a place of believing that spirit doesn't really operate by linear time constraints like we do. Mm-hmm. So then it could be argued that all those things were put in place knowing that I would make that ask at that point in time. And that was all orchestrated for prosperity ritual, Team Zen, check in the mail. Mm-hmm. You know, and again, there's no way to like I said last time, there's no way to concretely, objectively know. You just have to choose which reality you want to live in.
But I think there is a way to know. It's lies in the evidence that you keep doing it. And see, that's what, the ritual that I did before did not include using these life forces of like a flowering vine and natural bodies of water, but literally just sitting in silence, sitting in stillness, and connecting with your guides, connecting with spirit, and asking for exactly what you need. And then just having the faith that the universe is going to provide. And you don't have to know how, you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to go do something, that it just provides. And you do it time and time again, and you have faith that it's going to happen, and then it does happen. I think that's how you start to know, is like, that's your one experience. But I don't doubt that, based on the one that we kind of did in collaboration, that we're not going to get more evidence that this actually works. And so I think there is a way to know, and it literally lies in the evidence. And sure, your left brain can logic out of it and reason and but it's hard to do that when time and time again, it ends up being the exact number, the exact time frame, because that's exactly what you have to do in these prosperity rituals, is you ask for exact amounts, and that's what will be delivered to you. We're asking, I'll do, I won't share that yet. I won't share that just yet. But, so like, I'm asking for a certain amount, a certain dollar amount that I want to make out of my coaching work. And it sounds like that's kind of what you were doing as well. Like, this is the dollar amount I want to have in order to kind of be able to live and have this be my livelihood, be able to pay the bills and take care of my family. And so, when you're asking for that exact dollar amount, and that's when you add everything up, it either comes in one lump sum or multiple sums that add up to that amount. Like, that to me that's your no, that's your answer, it's your evidence.
So, and it's so easy to look at this and say confirmation bias is coming into play, right? Like, if you want to believe that it works, then when anything might come across your path that might hint at the idea that it worked, you're going to look at it and say, that means that this worked, right? But then it's really, the trick there is that skepticism can also be fed by confirmation bias. If I'm determined to be skeptical, I can have success after success after success after success and be like, this one's easily explained away with that. You can easily explain this one away with that. And so then you start confirmation biasing yourself out of it by just deciding up front that it's not really legit. You're going to find any reason possible to believe that it's not actually the prosperity ritual that's doing the thing,
And I think if you do that, then you're falling out of trust with the universe. And then it's not, I think when you do that, the gifts are not bestowed upon you. So I don't think it would keep happening if you
If you were a
sort of
skeptic,
sat
well, I
in
mean,
your, left brain and were skeptical.
I wasn't skeptical, but I wasn't bought in yet, and I'm still not bought in. Well, that's what I'm saying is like
Yeah.
this second time, like the first one, you could make an argument that it was the ritual, they did a thing. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, let's get more data. Let's do another ritual with another thing and see if that happens. And what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying is I can see that one being successful and me finding a reason to believe that it was a coincidence and doing another one and that one's successful and I find a reason to believe it was a coincidence. It's like the blue rhino story.
Mm-hmm.
How many times I see a blue rhino and argue myself out of it before actually coming face to face with evidence that I couldn't argue with anymore, you know? And,
Right.
and
But now you
so
believe in the blue rhino.
now I do
Mm-hmm.
after, you know, I could have taken any of those signs to believe in it, but it took a lot because I was determined to be skeptical until I realized that me immediately arguing these things away was my own confirmation bias against that thing being legit. I would find any reason to not believe it that I possibly could because it was more comfortable for me because then I wouldn't have to run around talking about the fact that I have a spirit guide who talks to me and proved that she exists with a little wooden hand-carved totem in Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I was very uncomfortable about having to defend to skeptics.
Sure.
And so again, but here's the other thing about this ritual is I'm not sure the ritual itself is doing anything on its own, cosmically, spiritually, autonomously. I think for me, I'm going to tell the story of the second prosperity ritual that I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I take my kid to get donuts every Saturday morning. It's a little tradition. And one morning he just didn't want to leave. He wanted to hang out. He wanted to play. I was like, well, then I'm going to go get donuts because I've gotten used to having donuts on Saturday mornings. So I go to get donuts. I come back and there's a moving truck across the street from us. And everything that's larger than a pickup truck is a big rig to him. And he loves big rigs. And so I get home and wife is like, hey, he wants to eat the donuts out front on the lawn because there's a big rig out there. So we go out, sit on the lawn, have our donuts and our coffee and a nice little family moment. He's like, I want to go on a walk. I said, well, where do you want to go on a walk? He goes, over there. So I'm like, okay, well, Bricks and I are going to go on a walk. We'll probably just go to the end of the street and back. And so the two of us just take off. And then when we get to the end of the street, I'm like, okay, let's go back to mommy. He's like, no, I want to go that way. I don't have my phone on me, don't have my watch on me, have no way of updating her that we're not coming back like I said we would. And we ended up going in this whole loop around our whole neighborhood. And it was a constant fight for me to let go of my expectation of what was going to happen. Because this little kid is just like pulling me in all kinds of other directions. And I'm just curious enough to want to explore with him and figure out where he's going to take me. And along the way, we pass by this tree with like some fallen branches and there's just bark that's fallen off. And he's like, I want to get the bark. First of all, I didn't know he knew what bark was. I thought he would call it wood or a tree or something, but he's like, no, I'm going to get bark. And I was like, well, I do need bark for a prosperity ritual. Hey, look, it's right here. Mm-hmm. So I let him pick one out. And I think that one's too big. And like, as though there's like a size recommendation at all. And so I'm like, okay, fine, just take the fucking bark. I don't care what size it is. You can break it. Every little thing that happens, I'm finding a reason why it should be something else. Mm-hmm. Until finally I find myself walking with my kid barefoot with bark in my hand and a wife on the lawn. And like, I'm like, this is just what life is right now. I'm just going to follow this and eventually we'll land home and I'll have the bark and everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. So then I go outside to get a flowering vine from my cucumber plant, but I realized that whole entire thing is dying except for one offshoot that has like my very last cucumber of the season growing on it. And I've been talking to this thing and I'm like, I know that you're working really hard. I know that it's really hot out here and there are bugs everywhere, but if you could just give me this one, like make this one vine a good one. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, I'll put you to rest with dignity at the end of the season. And so I'm looking for a good vine because I had this idea that how much the vine is flourishing is going to directly correlate to how much what comes back to me is flourishing. So I don't want to just pick off like one of the little sick ones. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to give up this whole vine. I'm going to have to give up my last cucumber, give up the one good thing that's growing on this plant, not getting eaten up. And so I prune it off and I wrap it around. I'm like, okay, here is my offering. And then that one thing, when I wrap it up, it's the exact same size and shape as the bark that Bricks picked out. Like they fit perfectly onto each other.
Together. Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to write my name, but then I realized that the back of the bark, it was so fresh that it was kind of muddy and kind of mossy and moist. And so like Sharpie's not going to work. Paint pen's not going to work. Chalk pen's not going to work. And then I went outside to go get my sandpaper to like grind it down to something dry and usable. And I never found the sandpaper, but I did find my box of paints. So I thought, okay, you know, if nothing else worked, I'll just paint my name on there. and that'll be that. So I painted my name on it instead of writing my name on the bark that was too big with a vine that fit perfectly. That was the only flowering thing in my backyard. And then I wait till he's at nap. I walk barefoot. I don't know why I was barefoot, but I go to the same spot that I did the last one, which is like where there's a creek running under a road. So it's all just concrete, you know? And last time we just kind of like we sat on the edge where you're like 10 or 15 feet up and we just threw it in the water. But this time I was guided to like go down into it. And so I walk, I'm like, here's the bridge. And so I walk down to the side and then down this like muddy, gross path to get into like right on top of the water. And it was super gross and weird. Like you would step on a little mound of dirt and you would just sink into it. Like, I don't know what's in this dirt. And then like I would step on a log and it, instead of holding me up, instead of crackling, it just also kind of sunk like it was made out of sponges. And I was like, what am I putting my bare feet in? What kind of diseases am I going to get? Like, I was super worried. I get all the way down to the base of the thing, and I'm sitting here on the water, and I'm thinking about how there's this big, gross concrete structure with gross, stagnant water in it, and then I turn around and I look at the actual little river, and ignoring everything that's behind me, I'm faced with just greenery, just lush greenery. And there's this canopy of trees that like only allows the sunlight to come through in certain spots. And so it's like little spotlights on these little plants that are like reaching up to, like, they know where the sun rays are going to be and they've grown in that direction to like soak it up. And the water is still and calm. And it was just so peaceful and serene. And for a second, I forgot that I was in the middle of a suburb in the middle of a city. And there I am barefoot, my feet in the water, with this little natural totem in my hand, which is loaded with story. It was loaded with all kinds of like, oh, and on the way, I was on the sidewalk and there was this like bush and a tree and a bunch of greenery that was just like overgrowing the entire thing. And it looked impossible to go through. And I almost felt my guide just like push me to go through it. And so I did. And then like all of the greenery just kind of like opened up and just let me through. I'll let you let your dog out. Yeah. No, I'm going to wait. No, she's telling me to keep talking, but I'm not going to because I don't want her to miss something. She's letting her dog out. The dog was barking. She has let the dog out. I have narrated this whole thing and I didn't say anything at all this whole time. Oh, she has them in the wrong ears. Are they in the right ears now? Good.
I didn't want to interrupt you. My dog was barking to get out.
I interrupted myself. I just narrated everything you just did. So I just kind of like decided to walk through all that greenery, and then it just kind of opened up. Like everything just kind of got out of my way and I was able to just walk through it. So here I am at the bottom of the bridge with my feet in the gross water, in the muck. And I don't have a sense of smell, so I couldn't tell if it smelled bad, but it looked like it smelled bad. And then I looked down at that totem and I was like, this bark is a story of me following the lead of something that isn't necessarily an authority over me and kind of took me away from my expectations. Written on the bark is my name in a medium that was given to me through an act of problem solving and overcoming a challenge that prevented me from doing what I thought was going to be done. Here in my hand is a sacrifice. It's the very last fruiting, flowering vine of a plant in the season that I was really looking forward to turning into some delicious pickles, but it's just going to go and live a different life. And all those things, and my path there was about, continuing to go forward in spite of a lot of reasons not to. And so I kind of sat there with all that story in my hand, and I just did my little request, and I sent it off with care as though it had a soul, because it did. And it
had spiritual energy.
I sat there with it for a second, and also known as soul. And then I thought, okay, that happened. That's done. I did the thing. And then walking out, I saw what I thought was two little clumps of dirt were two little toads. And they like jumped out from under me and turned around and looked at me. And it was like, I looked up what toads mean. And of course, it's abundance and prosperity and fertility and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, of course the universe would send me a couple little toads.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of like went back home, and I realized I had the thought that collection of materials is just going to sit there for a while, or maybe it'll sink. Like it's still there. It's still like,
Right.
floating or caught in some brush, or like, I don't know what happened to it, but it's not like that thing isn't the magical thing. The thing that's the magical thing is all of the experiences that I had leading up to it, and how much doing a ritual like that centers you in on the ask.
Oh, most
Like
definitely.
the request that you're making, you are making with your whole body, you're making with your time, you're making it with your effort. Your entire experience of self is wrapped up holistically in that ask, which is very different than being like, hey universe, I would love to win the lottery today, and then just going about your day. Like, you take time to really
Right.
be the request.
Yes.
And I think the ritual is something that gets you to that place, but it's you going to that place that actually makes it come to fruition.
Right. And I really like Kathleen's method because it does use the life forces of abundance, of flowering, of growing, of watering it, right?
Right.
To do that. And then you're putting your imprint, your energetic imprint on those natural life forces by putting your name on it.
Right.
So I really love her method. Mine's interesting because when I did mine, we did one sort of, as I mentioned, as a collaboration. And so I went on a hike. It was Labor Day weekend, and I had gone on a hike up on a lake here in the Dallas area, and it's heavily wooded, and just found a bunch of down trees. But I am always grounded, and so part of me wanted to go on this sacred journey of finding my materials for the very reason that you're talking about. Like, I'm trying to make myself be the ask, and it's all just a part of the process. And so I didn't want to just go find some random bark in the backyard, although I could have, and I will do that in the future. But I thought, oh, I'm going on a hike. This would be the perfect opportunity because I'm very grounded when I'm hiking. And we were out in a place that was not really populated, considering it was a holiday weekend and there were a ton of people out. There's like nobody out on this trail. So much so that I ran into 2 snakes because there's nobody on the trail. So I found that I was just able to get really grounded. And so that's where I found some bark for you, for some alchemy that you have in the works.
Yes.
And found myself a couple of different branches, bark type items. And so then I scooped them up, brought them home. And then I was like, okay, I need a flowering vine. I knew where I could find one on the creek near where I live, where I would be sending this off to the universe. They had a bunch of trumpet vine and whatnot, but I thought I'm going to try to just look within my own yard because my wife, that's her hobby. Although I'd like to garden, I sort of leave our backyard and all our plants up to her because it's the one way that she really relaxes and finds herself. So I was kind of looking around our yard and I was like, hey, what do we have that's a flowering vine? And we had like Malabar spinach, which kind of has a really pretty vine on it and it's edible, and or flower, pretty flower on it. But then we had something else. I can't remember what it was, but there were no flowers on it whatsoever. It was just green. It's just, it's like it's past flowering. And I'm like, well, I go through this whole process in my mind. I'm collecting. My thought process was I'm going to collect these things, kind of figure out where I'm going to source them so that when I can come together, I'm going to just make it into this one big practice. So I had collected the bark piece and I had put it on my spiritual altar that I have here in my room and just kind of waited. And then I went searching for the vine piece and I was going to cut it, time to do it, but I wanted to know where I was going to get it from. So I'm looking at this other vine in our backyard. I'm like, yeah, it's a flowering vine, but there's no flowers on it. But it didn't say, to my recollection, that it had to have a flower. It just had to be a flowering vine. So I'm like, okay, so that's really pretty. And it was viney enough that it would wrap well and all that. So fast forward to the day, I did it Monday on Labor Day where I was going to do the actual ritual, and I grabbed my my bark piece and I go out and fully intending to just cut a vine off of this plant and of course express my gratitude for it, for sacrificing a chunk of itself to be a part of my ritual and thanking it to be a part of this process. And I kid you not, there is one blossom like bud. It's not even, it hadn't even fully blossomed. There was one bud that was so tightly closed that you could see the color, but if just at first glance, you would say there's nothing on here that's flowering. And so I'm kind of looking like, which one of these would be the best one? There was one had a bud that did not have 2 days ago because it's too hot for it to bloom right now. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's almost like, I asked the question, I go,
you saw the bud after you cut it off?
Not after. I went to, but there was no bud on it when I chose that plant to be my flowering.
Right. Okay.
Vine.
Yeah.
So like Friday, no, it was Saturday. I think I was like, okay, I'm going to use this for my flowering vine. It doesn't have any flowers on it, but it just has to be a flowering vine.
And then after you picked it, a bud showed up.
But then on Monday, when I go to actually do the clipping, then there is a single bud that I barely saw. I was kind of like, oh, this vine looks really good. And I'm about to clip it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this one that I'm about to clip has a bud. It has an actual bud on it. And it should not have. It's too late in the season. And so I'm like looking all around, like, is this a miracle? Is this one of those things that because I chose this plant, it was going to give me a flower to do my prosperity ritual? And I'm like looking all over the plant. There's got to be another one here, right? This can't be just for me.
Nope.
And my guides are like, no, Abby, this is just for you. This is for you. And so I literally nowhere else on the plant can I find a bud. So I cut the vine that has the bud and I go to wrap it up, and it wraps really beautifully. And sort of the leaves were broad and flat, and they folded up really nicely. Like they sort of just wrapped around the bark. And then I tied it up with my natural twine. And all of a sudden this one little part of the vine like shoots off. So you have the little branch piece, you have the vine all around it, and it's all tied up nice and neat. And then all of a sudden, like this little piece shoots itself out of the twine that I had wrapped it with. It's the fucking bud. It's the bud, the little bud. Like everything is neatly wrapped and tied around the stick.
And it literally just
frees
itself from the binding.
Freed itself from the binding, and it's sticking up out. I should see if we can. Is there a way to post a picture in the show notes? Because I'm pretty sure I have a picture of it where you can see it sticking out.
Yeah.
And so I was like, the one bud that was for me is now like found its way out of binding and just shot out of this little bundle.
We are here.
Yeah, pretty much. So then we go, I take my family because I want my son to know this world, and I want him to know that he does have the ability to co-create, very much why you took bricks. You want him to see that you're doing this and what it means to you, and that it's important, and you really can co-create your life, even though you may not understand it right now. It's just me and daddy are going to throw a piece of bark in the stream. It's like, I know these things are going to be imprinted in their minds. And so my son's old enough to kind of understand. And so I talk to him in his language as to what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And he wants to go with me, and he's very excited, and he's intuitive, so he can feel that energy anyway. And so we go, and I had asked very specifically for what I wanted as I was wrapping the vine. And then I asked very specifically, kind of in a prayer-like way, right before I set it off into the water, and sort of sent it over the little waterfall. And then, of course, now I think it's probably still sitting there. But just this very similar, like just this crazy backstory of where the materials came from, sort of how they manifested. My flowering vine grew a flower just for me to cut, to put on my bundle. I mean, it's just,
and that's where the magic
incredible.
Is, yo. It is. Again, like the alchemy is the alchemists. Like you are the ritual, and all of the stuff that went into the moment where you sent it off into the water was all part of the ritual.
Absolutely. Yes. And we watched it go down, and kind of got stuck in this little debris, natural debris, where, at the bottom of the waterfall, things sort of get stuck because of where the water flows. And it just got stuck in there. And I thought, that's exactly where it's supposed to be. Just needs to hang out right here for a while. But I think like the key component to both of these stories is just respect. And one of our tribe members described it this way, because I always talk about it being a sacredness, which is hard for me sometimes, or a ritual, or because there's too much of a religious connotation to it that turns me off when I think about institutionalized religion. And he described it so eloquently, where he's like, you can take that word out of it by just literally calling it this mutual respect of using these materials, of respecting the process, that this really does work and it does happen, and you believe that there's an energy in the universe that is conspiring with you to unfold this beautiful life of yours if you allow it. And I think that's what we're both saying, is we just had this beautiful respect for the materials, and a gratitude for letting us use them to be a part of this collaboration with the universe. And now I believe it's going to work, because I've done other prosperity rituals and they've always worked for me.
What was your recipe, for lack of a better word, before Tucci introduced this one?
It was that I would, because I guess I never finished that. So you would kind of meditate. It would be a very specific ask. So that's the key here. It has to be a specific ask. You can't just say, I want more money, or I need more money, or it's like, I need $3,000 a month to pay my bills and have some fun, or, like it has to be an exact amount that you ask for. And sometimes even for a timeline, I need $3,000 a month for the next 12 months, whatever it is. So I got very specific in the ask, and then I would sit in stillness, and then I would do more like a visualization technique where I imagined that I already had that. And so I would go into a mental space where I saw myself actually having that. And then I would tap into the feeling of what that would feel like if I already had whatever I was asking for. What would that actually feel like? And then I would attach a feeling to it. And then I would feel that in my body. I would kind of do a body scan, grounding exercise. And then I would feel abundance. I would feel security. I would feel, any feeling that might be attached to what I'm asking for. Then I would write it down in a journal, and then I would do like a burning ceremony where I'd burn the paper. And so that for me was sort of what it was prior to using flowering vines and bark and water sources. So again, I think like you said, the alchemy lies in the alchemist. It has nothing to do with what you're doing, as long as you're respecting the materials, you're respecting the process.
Yes. And there are people who are wired to be brought to that place more easily by something like a ritual. Like I have a friend that I talk to every week who is just like, at the beginning of every single year, I talk to spirit, or he calls it God, and he's like, I just tell God, here's what I want this year. And it's not just like I'm going to throw it up there and then just sit on my ass and wait for it to happen. Like every single year he does that, it happens specifically what he asked for. And he just has that relational capacity with spirit that it doesn't require, he's not wired to need a ritual to really get to that place where he can throw that up in a way that's real and tangible. Right.
Sure.
And so I think, it's different strokes for different folks. The ritual can be anything that you want it to be.
But I would say that he probably has the same level of respect for God, though, right? Like he has that respectful relationship already established. Right. Where talking to him just might be an everyday thing, but it's the respect of the relationship.
Right. And for me, something like a ritual is something that puts me into that place of respect if I'm not already there. Like I could walk, there are days as I walk through life, just everything is wonder, and I live in this fantasy world of soul and spirit and brightness and color, and other times I don't. And I think there's some people who just kind of like walk in step with spirit. They just learned how to just go in stride, and they're always just like right there.
Yeah.
But for someone like me, who's kind of more all over the place, the one thing I can rely on is a ritual to get me to that place.
Yes. Well, and I am the exact same way, because I do walk through life totally mindless. I'm either sitting in the future or I'm sitting in the past. That's what I've learned from kind of being the observer of my thoughts and what goes on in my brain. And so for me, ritual is like, to commune with spirit, it has to be a very present-minded experience. You have to be fully in the here and now, not in the future, not worrying about the past, trying to change the past, but literally right here, right now is going to be your surest, clear path to the divine. And so for me, that's what ritual does, is it brings me to a place of being fully present so that I can actually have those lines of communication open. And so by intentionally, it's like when I go to dinner with my family, I intentionally silence my phone. I put it away. I don't want the phone to go off or be distracted by it whatsoever at dinner time, because I've chosen that to be a time where I want to be fully present with my family. I want to know what's going on in their world, you know, feelings that they're having. I want to do funny things, talk about jokes. You know, we have these questions that we ask each other, even my 5-year-old son. And so it's just that art of being fully present. And that's what ritual is for me. I think that's why I want to treat it that way, is because I want to be fully present. Because when I am, I'm aligned.
That's where spirit is. Spirit is here and spirit is now. And when you stop being there and being then you just kind of, it's easier to be where spirit is.
Yeah. All right. So that looks like it's about our time, even with our extra 5 minutes we burnt before we started recording. What are you grateful for?
Having some lighting issues for the podcast. That's a weird sentence. Grateful for. I am grateful for the guy I did the healing on today. Because again, it goes back to this idea that we are co-creating with the universe. And so I asked for more people to do healing on. And all of a sudden, this person just volunteers. I just had a surgery. But this is a person who I'm connected with because I detoured at a Barnes & Noble 5 years ago to compliment somebody on their wardrobe. That was still like my actions. But it's when you act, you're giving the universe material to do its thing. Without you acting, you're not. Just like I paid off the car this summer, I went and joined Team Zen, but then those things collaborated to create an experience of source in action.
Right.
And so I'm grateful that he was wearing a trench coat and a vest and a pocket watch and a bowler hat and goggles the day that I was in that Barnes & Noble, which led to an experience that not only is hopefully going to be good for him and his healing journey, but not only for me and my healing journey, but holy shit, led me to a couple of serious revelations that are going to undoubtedly have an impact on every other person I do energy healing on from this day forward.
Yes. That's fantastic. Everything is connected.
Sure is.
I love it. Okay. I am grateful for my sister today. My sister and all of her loving energy. She volunteers every Tuesday at this place called Project Cure. And she's my superhero in so many ways. She's my baby sister, taking care of her a lot in her lifetime, but she takes care of me by reminding me to love and what it means to fully love. And she just called me up today to tell me how much she missed me. And I love to hear that always. And we are about to do a big family camping trip next weekend. She's from Colorado. I'm from here, and my parents are from Nebraska. And so we're all going to meet in random Kansas for a camping weekend. And she, you know, because she wants us all to feel connected while we are physically present, and feel like just love on each other. Like, she's organizing golf times for us to go, and because we all enjoy playing golf as a family. And you know, we get a lot through eating together, like these meals, and there's a lot of laughter that comes out of that. And so just making sure that we're all planning these fun meals to serve each other. And so I'm just grateful for her ever constant reminder of just how much she loves, how deeply she loves, and just to mirror that a little more in my life. So I love her very much.
That is so impressive to me when people have the capacity, or even when it just occurs to them to like go out of their way to facilitate relationship. You know, to like plan things and be intentional about creating occasion for connection. That never ever even occurs to me. At no point do I have any time on my calendar where I'm like, I'm going to fill this with planning a thing. It just
that's how I am. Like, I'm going to show up in Kansas next week. I'm going to show up, and I know I have one meal I have to cook. that's about it. But she's like, what can we do while we're there? Let's like, well, we really laugh when we play golf. Let's get a tea time. We really like, yes, I'm the same way. I'm like, okay, great. Didn't even
How
think
does
about
your
it.
brain do that? Or like it takes so much work to facilitate the relationships I have. And that's just like, hey,
Yeah.
pay attention to me and care about my day. Like that
Yeah.
to me is work. I don't understand.
But that's why we have people like that in this world.
Yes.
And guess what her name is?
Sarah.
Sarah.
She is a Sarah.
She is a Sarah. And all that embodies for sure.
Oh my God. Yeah, we
Yeah.
love Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, until next time,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for loving me. Thank you for being there.
Bye.
That went by so fast.